Great. Thank you all for coming. As I said, the next speaker is on the board of iCode. I'm truly excited and humbled that he has agreed to join the iCode board. Doug Moore is the Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of the Fujitsu Network Communications here in Richardson. He oversees 4 principal lines of business: optical, wireless, software, and services. Doug is a passionate supporter and believer of the STEM education and the growth of the digital economy. As I said, in addition to being on the board of advisors for iCode, he's also a member of the board of the director of Associar, a certified minority women business enterprise, which is a system integrator and supply chain specialist. He's also the chairman emeritus and member of the board of directors of the Metroplex Technology Business Council, the largest trade association supporting high technology in North Texas. This is something that I didn't know either. In his spare time, Doug experiments with agriculture by raising grass-fed beef at his family ranch in Central Texas, which is amazing, a blend of technology and agriculture. As an avid outdoorsman, he relishes all summer and winter sports. Doug especially enjoys his work as a member of the board of the director of the Adaptive Spirit, a non-profit trade association that's a key supporter and partner in fundraising for adaptive athletics, including the U.S. Paralympics ski team. Doug receives his Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering from the University of Arizona and his Master's of Business Administration from Arizona State University. Please welcome Doug Moore.
Okay, quick poll. Who would rather hear me speak through the microphone or just talk to you like this?
I think I have to speak through the microphone. Yeah.
Microphone?
Okay.
I like to break rules. So I apologize, I'm going to hide behind the table here like a podium because I have notes, because I don't remember things really well. Put this microphone up. So my topic tonight is about human-centric innovation. And what I'd like to do, hopefully, is just maybe provoke some thoughts with you in terms of where you're going personally, where your children are going, and maybe what matters a little bit in the future. Before I start, how many people are coders in this room? Okay, knock knock.
Who's that?
Java. All right. There's at least 2 people that got that job. Anyway, a little bit about Fujitsu. Fujitsu is the 5th largest IT services provider in the world and #1 in Japan. We have 159,000 employees globally and about $40 billion in annual revenue. Fortune named Fujitsu as one of the world's most admired companies in 2013. We're very proud of that. We're very proud of the fact that we're also very eco-conscious, and Newsweek ranks us as the 17th most eco-conscious company in the world, and we've been recognized by a number of groups in that regard. We also have 97,000 patents worldwide. So we are a technology company, and technology is what matters to us. I mentioned human-centric innovation, and this isn't about what's the next best cool thing. We believe technology exists, and our purpose as a company is to benefit people, to enrich lives. And technology and science and creativity and collaboration and imagination are all essential to doing that. I personally work for Fujitsu Network Communications, so I appreciate Abid's gracious introduction. We are the US-based subsidiary that builds big communication networks. So when you think about our business, I always tell my kids we're the plumbers of the internet. We are involved in building any kind of major scale networking that would carry voice or data or video traffic or any type of communications from point A to point Z. Large telephone companies, wireless carriers, cable TV companies, video companies, cable companies, they all use our technologies. And when you're on the internet right now, I can assure you the internet traffic is traversing one of our networks. If you're on your mobile phone on the way home, it's traversing one of our networks. So I joined our industry in 1984. And when you think about timing, prior to that, we had about 100 years of what I would just kind of call not much progress. Now, there are a lot of people that would argue that in social evolution and other technologies, but in communications, basically you had phone service, tip and ring, and it didn't change a whole lot from when Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone to really the early 90s. But around 95, the internet became prevalent. Right? We had these guys up at the University of Chicago working with the government. They created Netscape, and all of a sudden there was a means of utilizing the network. Wow, this is... Hey, is it better with my hand over it? So we had kind of a static economy up until that mid-90s. And then internet technologies necessitated the need for bandwidth and for growth of networks. And that's proliferated, right? And if you've read Thomas Friedman's book, right, it's flattened the world. It's put us all in a position of really changing what we do and how we do things. In my business, we went through an internet bubble, right, and then a burst. And now we're kind of going through an up and down after effect of that. But what's really changing today that I see as a result of this innovation in the internet is the way society values things. So when I particularly deal with my children, I have two boys, they're 23 and 25 years old. They value content. They value experience. And so what I see happening in our world is bricks and mortar are becoming less relevant. And if you think about it, what's the enabler of content and experience? I mean, it's basically science and software. Think about what the iPhone did to the clamshell Motorola flip phone that my father still has. But, you know, it was the software. It's the customer experience that allowed iPhone to dominate that industry. In 2 years, look at what Uber has done to the taxi industry. Right? A lot of people in my generation were really skeptical about Uber, but then you realize, what's Uber about? It's customer experience. I feel safer in Uber than I do in a taxi. This isn't a commercial about Uber, but I think there's much, much greater value built into it. And then you think about things like fantasy football. I mean, we used to trade spreadsheets and, you know, sheets of paper 20 years ago. There are two companies right now that are spending collectively $1 billion in advertising this year on fantasy football leagues online. And so you can game continuously. And of course, we all expect things now, right? I think I ordered 5 or 6 things from Amazon Prime today, and my tough decision is, do I want it in 2 days or do I want it this afternoon? But again, it's enabled by science, it's enabled by software. It's enabled by critical thought. So what are the implications of that for business? I'm feeling this today in my business. Things are very perishable. What worked 20 years ago is really at risk today. And pretty soon what works today is going to be at risk in 2 or 3 years. You know, everybody who went and got an MBA thinks about Kodak and Polaroid and, you know, what happened when the digital camera replaced film. They're icons, right? We all know that, we see that. But who remembers Netscape? Who remembers America Online, MySpace, GeoCities? They were huge just a few years ago. So success today is tied to very, very rapid and continuous innovation. And that's driven by software and content, which creates that quality of experience. So here's a question for you. After I've extolled the virtues of Uber, who thinks Uber's going to be around in 10 years? What does the self-driving car do to Uber, let alone the taxi industry? It's not a good time to be preparing for a career in taxi driving. And what happens to General Motors or Ford or Lexus or Jaguar when Apple builds a car? Well, we've all gotten a taste of Tesla. So what is sexy about Tesla? Right? When I was of the age when we started driving, horsepower mattered, right? Maybe a little bit about the style. But what defines our experience today? It's the control. My car can parallel park itself. It's collision avoidance. And soon it becomes self-driving. So people who can create knowledge, who can assimilate that user experience are going to succeed. One other thing I want to mention is all of this is proliferating data. And the beautiful thing about data is we can learn from data. We can determine what we want, what's trending, and we can start to predict things. So the other value in the new economy is the ability to analyze data, to reuse that information, to turn it into knowledge. That also requires software and really strong critical thinking skills. I believe it's all software and science, right? Whether it's math, whether it's engineering, whether it's physics, they all enable that critical thinking skill. And then if you could take that software skill and mold it together with the hard science, you're a rock star. I was listening on NPR driving to work, I think Monday or Tuesday, and they were talking about genome research that is starting to solve migraine headaches. So I went online and I went to the NIH. There's a National Human Genome Research Institute. Do you know there's a Genome Advance of the Month? In July, last month, the Gene Therapy and Biological Treatment of Hearing Loss is the Genome Advance of the Month. Last December, it was detecting cancer precursors in blood DNA before the disease develops. Every month there's innovation. But here's the problem. And this is a US problem, it's a societal problem. We are not creating enough scientists, we are not creating enough coders to meet the need. And we will not have an innovative base as a country if we don't address this. I'm big on government websites. This is also from the U.S. Department of Education and Office of Civil Rights. Nationwide, 50% of high schools offer calculus, and only 63% offer physics. And it gets even worse if you look at schools that are predominantly Black, Latino, American Indian, or Alaskan Native students. There's a huge gap growing. If you look at the number of schools that provide Algebra 1, it's 89%. Not 100%, 89% nationally. Geometry, 85%. Chemistry, 75%. So we have a big, big challenge as a country, and my wish to all of you is success. I know you're going to be successful because you're here, and you're thinking about the right things. But I also ask you to think about what we can do within our community to help grow, in particular, to grow STEM education across the board. If you look demographically at girls in school, young ladies entering universities, women's graduating from colleges, and almost every minority group, they're underserved in a huge way. And that's not good. That's not good for society. You will not have a human-centric innovation if the humans that are creating the innovation don't understand the users of that innovation. So, with that, I would like to say thank you. I know I probably overspoke my limit. Be happy to answer any questions if you have, and I thank you for being here this evening, and I thank you for listening. Yes.
My son is in first grade in iCode here, and there is no girls. And I mean, I have a boy, but I'm a girl. So why do you think that is? That still today, when we know that we need more diversity, we need girls, we need the ethnic diversity. Why is it there are no girls?
Well, I think, yeah, I think there's kind of two parts to that question. The first is girls, and in general, I think our bias as society, unfortunately, conditions girls at a very young age not to think they can succeed in this manner. So the earlier you put anybody into this kind of environment, the greater the odds of success are, and that's why things like iCode, things like the Lego robotics programs, anything that engages young people, girls or boys, what really kindergarten, pre-K is when they start to build, the mindsets and the impressions of whether they're going to be able to succeed at math or science or, computing. One thing that I think may change, and this is just my hope, it's not fact, but when I see most young kids today, if they have something like this, they're pretty intuitive, right? They understand a lot more than I do with very little instruction. So they all need one, okay? I mean, I don't want to get on a rant, but there are lobbies within our state and local governments to preserve textbooks in schools because things like this are threats to them. But the value of electronic media is a lot more than just being ecologically friendly, and also knowing that the book that your child is reading is not 8 years out of date. It is other learning. I think the same issues apply to minority groups, but I think there's an economic divide. And I believe it true that where you see that disparity in the number of schools that are providing algebra and geometry, there's an economic divide in those school districts. That's something else that has to be addressed. You can't have equal opportunity without equal education.
Why is it not an educational requirement to have those classes? I mean, when I was in school, which I'm old, but I just don't understand how that's not a mandate. That's concerning. I had no idea that was not an across-the-board requirement.
And there's huge debates. I think that core curriculum has been meddled with in the state of Texas for the last 10 years. It has been nationally. Things are mandated, then people complain because it's tested and you teach to the test. There's a lot of debate about the effectiveness, and I'm not sure I have a clear view on that. I think ultimately two things really matter. The opportunity has to be there. So the courses need to be available in the school. And then ultimately the parents, the families, the society, and the teachers have to do everything they can to encourage it. Other questions? Yes.
Well, first I'd like to thank you for being with us tonight. And what do you see young workers joining Fujitsu or any other company today lack the most? What do you think is the greatest weakness in our young labor force today?
Well, I will say this. Largely speaking, we're only hiring engineers. So when I bring somebody into our company, and we'll target roughly 50 college grads this year, they're going to be 95% engineers. And I'm a little bit pig-headed because I have this belief that an engineer can kind of do anything. That doesn't exclude other skills, you know, mathematicians, other forms of science, but critical thinking is the root need that we have to have with anybody that we're bringing into the workforce. My problem isn't the young workforce coming in. Honestly, in some cases, it's myself and others trying to adapt to these changes. I do think the bigger issue is the one that I mentioned before, which is we are just not graduating enough engineers and scientists and mathematicians from our schools. To me, the golden egg for anybody, if you know how computing works and you can do basic coding, and then you have artistic capability or some other hard science, you're going to succeed. You're going to have a job, and you're probably going to have a really good job.